Good evening. Take a seat, Utkarsh.
Thank you, sir.
So Utkarsh, as we can see that you belong to Indore,
Yes, sir.
and Sultanpur is your place of birth.
Yes.
That is Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh.
Yes.
Political science and international relation is your optional. BTech, mechanical engineering, and reading non-fiction and writing their reviews on your blog.
Yes, sir.
All right. And your preference is number 2 is Indian Foreign Service,
Yes.
and IPS is the third preference. Okay, so let me first of all ask you uh, that many times you must have seen, and this is a case just of observation, that the traffic constable on the road is aiming some machine in the form of a gun towards your car when the car is coming. What is that thing?
So it is to gauge the speed of the vehicle, whether was it overspeeding or not.
Okay.
Speed gun.
So what is the principle on which that thing is based? How do you calculate the speed just by aiming that thing towards your vehicle?
Sir, there is this formula in physics in which speed is equal to distance upon time. So it might send some rays which go and come back from the vehicle, and the time taken to move from the gun to the vehicle is calculated.
What is the name of that principle? It was discovered by someone, and it is a very famous thing. In fact, the distance, the speed of the stars is also calculated on the same way. It starts with the letter D. Now you tell us. What is it called?
So I'm not able to recall.
Doppler effect?
Yes, sir. Doppler effect.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. What do you understand by a civil servant doing walk the talk?
Sir, it might mean that he is doing what he's saying, and he is true to the principles, and he ensures probity in governance.
Okay. So, civil servant, besides walk the talk, what other things are important for a civil servant? Value system. What are the values which you think are important?
So he needs to be accountable to the public, and secondly, sir, he has to ensure absolute integrity in his professional as well as personal life.
So, what is integrity?
So integrity is also a form of walking the talking, because it is when there is coherence in your speech, thought, and action. That means you possess integrity.
Okay. Or in other words, would you like to phrase this in the following manner? Do what you say and say what you do.
I might, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now, do you think honesty is alone necessary, or there is something other than the honesty also? Honesty, integrity is no doubt required, but what else is required for a civil servant, and which Mr. Modi has been pointing out again and again while making many speeches on Civil Services Day and so on. So what is that which is important, which a civil servant must possess? It is one of the very important principles of good governance. There are 8 ingredients of good governance. You must have read through them.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is that thing? It starts with the letter E.
So I think a civil servant must be efficient.
Efficient, and again E.
So effective.
Effective. So efficiency and effectiveness. A person may remain honest throughout his life, but he doesn't perform. So he is an unethical public servant. So he must have efficiency and effectiveness.
Yes.
Delivery, productivity. All right. So what is meant by conflict of interest?
Sir, it is a situation that arises when you are in a position to take a decision, and the decision you take might give you certain benefits at a personal level. So in that situation, you are under conflict of interest.
Uh, okay, can you give an example?
Sir, recently, Srimati Chanda Kochar, who was the CEO of ICICI, since she was heading that bank, and a loan was given to a company, and that company had transaction with a company which is owned by her husband. So that was a situation of conflict of interest.
Correct, absolutely fine. Now, supposing you are a representative of India at the United Nations, and you are asked to speak for a few minutes on justifying the place of India as on a permanent member of the United Nations. What are the things that you are going to speak of the Security Council, permanent member of the Security Council?
So I would say that the UN, when it was made around 75 years ago, now it does not reflect the current realities. And secondly, why India should be a member? Because by any objective criteria, be it population, be it economic strength, military strength, or history of being a democratic and liberal state, by any objective criteria or being a civilizational state, India fulfills all the criteria that needs to be a member of the UNSC. And this is the ninth time when India is at the table, and it has been elected by a majority, overwhelmingly, so 187 out of 190 votes, which also shows that it enjoys legitimacy. And whenever the world faces uh, grave threats like the COVID pandemic, so and the West was not coming up to share their vaccines and their patents, so it was India that stepped up to the demand of the world. So, sir, I would say time has come for a billion voices to find their recognition and their acceptance at the global high table.
Okay. Uh, Supposing a constable discovers a bag containing 1 lakh of rupees, someone might have left it there by chance. He finds that there is a name and mobile number written inside, and he rings up that person, and that person he hands over that 1 lakh rupee. He is very happy. He gives 5,000 rupees to that constable. Now, if he accepts that money, do you think it is ethical? If he does not accept the money, what do you think? Should he or should he not? He is giving on his own accord. He is happy because he has got the 1 lakh rupees. Now, what is your opinion? There is no such coercion, there is no such pressure. He's handing over the money.
Sir, I see two issues here. So, firstly, when people give a certain reward, say 5,000 rupees, that is to induce good behavior. But, sir, here the case is not of good behavior because the constable is already an honest person. And secondly, sir, he should not accept the money because, sir, what he did was his duty, and he's already getting a salary for that. So, sir, I think he should not take the money.
That's my last question to you. In the recent elections, 5 states were going to polls. So many questions were put up to the people, and they were really not concerned, most of them, about the unemployment or other problems being faced, public service delivery, and so on. They were happy over the fact that Ayodhya temple has been constructed and Kashi Vishwanath has been given a facelift. Why this shift has suddenly taken place? Is it the right direction?
Sir, firstly, I would say this shift has taken place because it was pertaining to a demand of certain section of the people, and there was a certain demand from the people since a long time. So they might have thought that since our demands, decade-long demand has been fulfilled, so they might have considered that a factor. And secondly, sir, I would say that should alone not be a factor and the trend towards which our politics should go. And so, thirdly, I would say that even development was an issue because I come from UP, and so I was there when the elections were taking place. And when I interacted with one or two people, they said that they had got rations during the COVID pandemic, and so people have got the LPG through the scheme, Saubhagya scheme, and the electricity is more than 18 hours in the rural areas. So people are happy with the governance. Coupled with this identity issue, both I think played a.
What about the health infrastructure during second wave of COVID-19? Bodies floating in the Ganges River.
So, firstly, so that was unfortunate.
People forgot that.
So,
And the only thing on which they concentrated was that here is the two temples, So somehow the mindset has been changing over a period of time.
sir, I would not say that, because people do not forget the death of their kin. So, and secondly, sir, the health infrastructure was overwhelmed across the world, because sir, it was a pandemic and we were not prepared for it. Sir, as it is, our investment in health infrastructure is below what is required. So, as unfortunate as it was, sir, things have been taken in the steps have been taken in that direction.
Student of political science.
Yes, sir.
No, it's optional, no?
Yes,
It's optional.
Yes.
The, what is the role of pressure groups and interest groups in framing of a law or in a framing of a policy?
Sir, as the name suggests, the pressure groups apply some pressure on the policy making body of the state to give a direction to the policy where they wanted to like to go. So we have different kinds of pressure groups in different professions, and they have their own interests. So that is what they do, sir, employing different various means. They pressurize the policy making government.
Give example, one or two examples of good policy resulted actually because of these pressure groups and interest groups, and one or two examples of bad policy.
Sir, a good example would be, sir, during the times of emergency. So I would say the whole nation became a pressure group, and because
going to 75, 1975.
yes, sir.
Well, so many years have passed. We should give example actually from the recent past, not.
Okay.
There are many
Yeah.
many public policies can be deemed as good and some bad on account of the pressure.
So one example, I would say a good, classifying it as a good one would be, so recently India decided not to join the RCEP. Because there was pressure lobbying from the dairy sector and the steel sector, because the goods from China and Australia and New Zealand would have flooded Indian markets, and so that would have caused certain challenges to our own sectors. And so a bad example, in my opinion, would be the taking away of the farm laws because of the pressure built by the farm lobby. So these two examples are coming to my mind.
From Uttar Pradesh.
Yes.
How you will market Uttar Pradesh for investment? There is a national level summit. All the state chief ministers are trying actually that investment come to their states. Now you are also with the chief minister. And your duty is actually to convince the investors to invest in Uttar Pradesh. How you will market your state?
So I would say Uttar Pradesh has almost all the requirements that a good industrialist would need. So firstly, Uttar Pradesh is at the second position in India in ease of doing business. So secondly, it is now called as the Expressway Pradesh because it has 6 expressways linking the east to the west and north to the south. And so thirdly, Uttar Pradesh has, if it were a country, it would have been fifth largest country. So you will also have a large market for your products. So sir, I think I would give these arguments.
Sufficient?
So I would
What,
also
what
say
they expect actually, what the investors want, what are their priorities. These things any state will offer. It's very common. What special things actually you will offer. There is a competition. You haven't spoken about the law and order situation.
Yes.
You haven't spoken about the infrastructure, the power supply, the concessions, the taxes.
Yes, sir. So recently, in the last few years, I would say the law and order has improved considerably in Uttar Pradesh. So the investors also look for stability in policies. That too is there. And so since we are seeing infrastructure in the form of Jewar International Airport, which will be one of the largest airports of the world coming up in Noida. So it will be also promoted as an export destination. And so we are also seeing national waterways coming up across Varanasi to Haldia. So these two would be factors for consideration.
You offer something more to get more investment. Anyway, my last question: what is the role of local bodies in shaping a democracy? Why they are important in democracy? And why we often forget actually the local bodies when we talk about the administration?
So, firstly, they are important because they are the first point of contact of people and administration. So they, when people face some problems in their villages, the first person they contact to is the Pradhan of the village because they know him personally. So, sir, democracy, any system, be it democracy or any other system, rests on legitimacy of the people. So, at the lower level, when people see that they are being provided facilities from the state and their grievances are being redressed, it improves the legitimacy of the democracy in the eyes of the people. And so, coming to the second part, so these are ignored sometimes because there are certain factors to it. So, firstly, I would say there is economic factor. So these are always under a fund crunch. Secondly, sir, there is not a dedicated cadre of bureaucracy for these uh, local bodies. And so, finally, I would say there is also sometimes political parameter also, in which the state leaders might think that too much uh, contact of people with the local body might boost the.
These are all general things actually. What is their why they are important?
Sir,
The schemes, the policies, the implementation of those to grassroots level.
Yes.
We have to talk about that.
Yes.
That's why the local bodies are involved. It is not that there is a pradhan and there is a municipality chairman. They are not important because of that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Utkarsh,
Yes, ma'am.
IR and International Relations and Political Science is
Yes,
your
ma'am.
optional. Okay. Who's the next foreign secretary?
Ma'am, he's Shri Vinay Mohan Patra.
Okay. And is it a normal transition promotion or will it raise to further any controversy?
Ma'am, there are questions about him superseding some of the current diplomats.
For what reason? At least what the media says.
Ma'am, a diplomat was saying that since he has served in the Prime Minister's office for a few years and his work was, it came into the eyes of the PM, and since he is someone who delivers, so he might have found him suitable for the job.
And also speaks French.
Yes, ma'am, he does.
He's been the translator. Okay. In the current Russia-Ukraine crisis, can the Russian president be accused of war crimes? Because the Western world is demanding that he should be tried for the war crimes.
Ma'am, to put someone on trial, we will need two things. Firstly, evidence of the war crime, and secondly, an institution to prosecute him. Ma'am, firstly, if there is an evidence, because ma'am, what we are seeing in media, how much can we rely? Because there is a media that shows the side from Russia. There is a media that also shows the side
But a
from.
picture is worth 1,000 words.
Ma'am, if that is the case and it is proven that he is guilty of the war crime, then he must be tried because that is a violation of the human right.
Who will try him? Because if US does the same thing, same aggression, do we try them?
Ma'am,
Or do we demand even to try them?
Ma'am, I agree that when US invaded Afghanistan or Libya or Iraq, there was not as much furor as we are seeing now. So, ma'am, I see, according to me, ma'am, human rights violations are human right violations, irrespective of whether the US did it or the Russians did it. But, ma'am, since we have one agency, the International Criminal Court, to try individuals for war crimes, and these nations are not signatory to it, then, ma'am, we have a lack of institution and lack of consensus as well across the world whether to try him or not.
What is your personal view?
Ma'am, if there is a crime, if there is violation, then the culprit must be punished.
What is the biggest social fallout of this war?
Ma'am, the lives of people have been destroyed. There is a lot of internal migration across European borders. And ma'am, migration was one of the issues for Brexit and for the rise of certain authoritarian leaders like Viktor Orban and others. So it might give a rise to more identity crisis.
Yeah. And migration would also change the demographic, position in Europe. I mean, whether it was from Syria or whether it is now from Ukraine, whether East Europe or West Europe, the religious and the demographic component is going to change for all times to come. Yeah, I don't want to go into that what it will lead to, but recently or just now, the no, tell me what does IPCC stand for?
Ma'am, it stands for Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change.
Yeah, and what is the latest report say?
Ma'am, the latest report warns that we are going to see more of climate extreme events, and in countries like India as well. It has pointed out cities like Lucknow, which might face more extreme temperatures. And even by the current efforts, it is very less likely that we would reach the targets of the Paris Climate Summit.
What is the target?
Ma'am, the target is to reach below 2 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial levels and try to reach 1.5 degrees
To
Celsius.
maintain 1.5. Yeah. So, but for that, how much of global emissions will have to be reduced percentage-wise by which year?
Ma'am, I'll have to see.
43%.
Okay, ma'am.
By 2030. Does it look feasible?
Ma'am, it is challenging, but we can try, ma'am.
We can try. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so let's continue on Paris Agreement.
If we see the statistics since the Rio Summit in 1992, the greenhouse gas emissions have increased and are increasing till today. So how do you expect that they will start decreasing tomorrow onwards and will decline by 35 in a substantive manner? Is it a realistic assessment?
So I would say from 1992 till now, the consciousness regarding climate change has much increased, which was not very much earlier. And so, secondly, I would say developing countries like India, are moving forward in this direction, and we will achieve our NDC targets before 2030. And now countries are coming up with climate neutrality goals by 2050 or 70. And so I would say, sir, and since last few years when we had witnessed Australian bushfires or droughts across the world or extreme temperatures, so now the countries are taking steps in this direction. And so I would say that the emission of CO2 is increasing, but we are doing best to achieve the target, the global humanity as a whole, sir.
So you feel that there is a more awareness and things may change.
Yes,
So let's hope for the best.
yes, sir.
Now, coming back to Russia-Ukraine issue, what is your view? Could Western world, led by Americans, impose economic and what you call mm, digital sanctions against Russia on their own? For example, my funds are lying in American bank. They impose sanction, I cannot withdraw those funds. Is it justified in an international system?
So I would say it is not justified in an international system. And so India too does not recognize unilateral sanctions. But so the tragedy of international system is that we are currently living in a system that was made by the victors of the Second World War, and be it the UN or be it the Bretton Woods institutions, and that led to the dollarization of the world. So now, so I would say it is time that even though it's a dollar, it is difficult to replace dollar as a reserve currency, but countries should look for some alternatives.
Okay. So the sanctions should be imposed by the United Nations, not by XYZ countries.
Yes, sir.
On the other hand, the West European countries talk about freedom of expression. And if you look at all the Russian channels and transmissions have been blacked out completely. And they have, in fact, spreading fake news in the last 1 month. So what kind of international order you are envisaging under these circumstances?
So I would say we are moving towards a certain bipolarity, somewhere between bipolarity and multipolarity. So bipolarity because China is rising, and so somewhat multipolarity because even we are rising, other nations are also rising. So, sir, I would say uh, multipolarity and somewhere between bipolarity and multipolarity is the order that we are moving towards.
Okay, anyway. Now moving to back to India. What is the electoral college to elect the president of India? Because the election of the president of India will be due this year. So what is the electoral college and how the value of the vote is calculated?
Sir, the electoral college comprises of the members of the parliament, uh, and so the members of the legislative assemblies of the state. And so different
Members,
states.
sure.
Sir,
All
the
members.
yes, sir, I would say all members for the election.
Not only the states but also union territories.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so the formula comprises of the population of the state and divided by the number of seats in the legislative assembly, and further division to by thousand or by factor of thousand or hundred, sir, I'm not able to recall. And so with this, every MLA gets a certain vote, and that vote depends on the state to state. So it is equal for the members of the parliament.
No, that's not the formula. You have to read it.
Okay, sir, I will.
It's 50% for the members of parliament, remaining 50% for all the 28 states and union territories.
And it is
then
always
different.
elected members, not only
Elected
members.
members.
It is always elected members.
Sorry,
Elected
sir, I
members,
will read
and
this.
then that 50% is divided equally amongst all those MLAs.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, that is one part. Now you have connection with MP and UP both.
Yes.
So I'm presuming you now from MP. Okay.
Yes.
What are the World Heritage sites in Madhya Pradesh?
So one is the Sanchi Stupa, the second is the Khajuraho temples,
Mhm.
and the third is the Bhimbetka caves.
Okay. So now coming back to Bhimteka caves, after discovery of these caves, what has changed in the history of the world?
Sir, I will have to read over it, sir.
Okay, very significant change of the history of the world and history of India, both. Okay.
I will have to see.
Okay, so I think that's all. Thank you from my side.
Utkarsh, you said you have published a research paper.
Yes, sir.
What it is about?
Sir, it is about solid state welding. So because the conventional welding involves melting the metal, so we performed a solid state welding on aluminum alloy, and then so we compared the material properties of the tungsten welding, inert gas welding, and so the solid state welding, and so we found that the solid state welding was
And
better.
where did you publish?
Sir, it was published in the Materials Today proceedings by Scopus.
Does it have an impact factor?
Sir, it has a side score because sir, it is by Scopus, so it has a side score of around 2, sir.
Okay, fine, good. You know, in discussion with sir earlier, you said UN is 75 years old and does not reflect reality. How old is our constitution?
Sir, around 70 because it was formed in 1949.
Does it reflect reality?
Sir,
And US constitution is more than 200 years old. Many of the countries are more than 100 years old. So is the reality impression that you are trying to give, does it change with age?
so reality changes with time and age, sir.
But so you are implying that we should we should rewrite our constitution.
Sir, I'm not implying that, sir. Sir, our constitution has already seen more than 100 amendments, so it's a dynamic, sir.
Okay, since I just picked up from this.
Yes, sir.
Now, tell me about economics. Our GDP growth rate is down, not necessarily because of Corona, but even before Corona. But our stock market is celebrating, is going high and high. Yeah. Is stock market an index of our economic performance?
Sir, I would say to some extent. So there is a difference because the GDP is calculated of the previous year, but the stock markets reflect the sentiments and optimism for the coming time.
Yeah, but then how are they related?
So they are related because if the stock market is going up, that shows that the investors have certain confidence, and then so we might see more investments coming up, and it's a vicious cycle. Virtuous cycle of investments and GDP growth starts.
But okay, and this is not only in India, many other countries, there is hardly any growth in Europe. The stock market is going up. I'm confused. But you think they are directly related? Okay. Now tell me, define the relationship between interest rate, inflation, and growth rate. How they are interlinked.
Sir, in normal course of the economic growth, the inflation tends to rise because the incomes of people rises. But sir, when the inflation rises, the interest rates also rise so as to control the inflation. So, sir, all the three are interlinked in their way.
Yeah, but I don't know. What should government do if inflation is very high?
So, since the RBI has the mandate of inflation targeting, so we will need a synchronization of the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. Because when we are seeing very high inflation, the government may reduce some taxes, and so the RBI at the same time might increase the interest rate.
Government reduce taxes and the RBI increases the interest rate.
So that maybe
So that balances the growth.
so for the time being, it might tame the inflation.
Okay, think about it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Utkarsh, we'll take you back to the waiting room for a few moments and we'll call you back for feedback. Okay? Utkarsh, have a seat. So, Utkarsh, when is your interview fixed?
20th April.
20th April. Okay, so still you have got about a fortnight almost with you. And first of all, let me ask you, how do you think you performed at this interview?
So I would say average was
Okay.
2 or 3 mistakes.
Okay.
I'm regretting.
Well, don't lose heart. You have performed very well. You are very good. There is no problem on that. You have a very good knowledge base, and you were careful in giving the answers. That both sides of the answers you were able to give. So it was a balanced thing. Not only balanced, you were also mentally alert. You were able to listen, think, and then come out with the answer, which again is a very good positive point. So balance of judgment, mental alertness, then critical power of assimilation, that is analyzing the thing, analytical skills. Your delivery is fine, you are calm, composed, clarity, communication skills are fine. So knowledge and skills both are good. Then I could also find that you have the knowledge is very good. At some points, you may require some more depth in that knowledge, which we shall point out to you. And at no point of time were you disturbed. You did not try to bluff. There was honesty. So that again goes in your favor. So all these things, and sometimes very provocative questions were also asked by us, and you were able to maintain your calm, quiet, and also come out with answers with good balance. So this facing the provocative question was also a good thing. Now coming to the specific questions, the question was asked, for example, regarding the pressure groups. So pressure groups, you must, since you are a student of political science, so you must go through that in slightly more detail. What is interest group? What is lobbying? What is pressure group? What is advocacy coalitions? What is the role of media? What is the role of political parties? So they are generally called as the unofficial actors in public policy making. So therefore, you must know what are the official actors and what are the unofficial actors. So official actors, you know too well. It is the Prime Minister, the legislature, the executive, even the judiciary. So they are the official actors, and you must understand what are the roles they are performing. So coming back to the unofficial actors, the pressure groups which were there, and these pressure groups and lobbies play a very important part in the Western countries. Even in Indian context, they are also. So the question was asked about good policies which have come as a result of the pressure groups exercising pressure over the public policy makers. So RTI definitely was one. Lokpal was another. RTE is the third. Then even sanitation, there were pressure groups, so they did. So many pressure groups have resulted into good policy making. Some of the bad examples of pressure groups, well, though it is debatable, but the farm laws was regarded, because you said that the withdrawal of the farm laws was bad. You felt that the farm laws were in the interest of farmers. They may be, but the people who were allegedly being benefited, they did not think that way. So they felt that this have resulted without any consultation process. So that was a result of, because the allegation was that they have come as a result of some elitist, group which is pressurizing, so that ultimately the farmers have to make out distress sales. And the concept of MSP and the market committees, and the marketplaces goes up. So that may be going to be one of the example. It might have been successful provided there was a consultation. So the legitimization part of the public policy making, that was done away with. That is why 9 months they stayed on the road and did not do that. All right. So then the role of the local bodies in democracy, that is again a very important, because that, in fact, metropolitan councils and all these things, they are having a very useful purpose. They represent democracy at the grassroots. So not only they carry out the development works, but they convey the voice of the people, and they act as a bridge between the administration and the people of this. So they are the first stage of the democracy at the grassroots. So is the panchayat in the case of panchayati Raj institutions. Then who's the next foreign minister that you were able to come out, and what is the controversy associated with that? That was also fine. And war crimes, can the USSR president be tried, as has been stated by the United States? So you came out with that international court of criminal court that can probably work on that, but it's a very debatable thing, because whether it will be actually feasible or not. And then the issue was the biggest social fallout of this war, and you came out with this, that the migration, so that issue, that was absolutely fine. And then coming to the environment issue, so about the emissions, whether they can be reduced by 40+%, that was a very, very far drive. It probably would be difficult, but you came out with a conservative and balanced answer that we can make an attempt. If it comes, well and good, though it is slightly difficult. Then, of course, the IPCC and the Rio summit, the greenhouse emissions have increased and increasing day by day, and the awareness for environment, that of course was the issue which was asked. Electoral college to elect president, you may have to go and read it slightly more greater detail. And what are the World Heritage Site in Madhya Pradesh? So you were able to come out. In fact, many such questions may come about UNESCO, the sites which have been all over the country, which are the sites which have been declared by the UNESCO. And then, of course, what has been the change after the discovery of these particular sites?
caves.
So the history of India and the history of the world has undergone a change because of many pieces of information, which has come out of this particular. And then, of course, the stock market is booming, even though economy is in a nosedive, the GDP growth. So that you were able to come out. You can go and study slightly more, because that is a perplexing question. People are perplexed why it is happening, and they are all trying to give their own reasons for that. You can study that. So some of the good policy, the food security was also a very good policy as a result of the pressure groups. And then interest rate, inflation, and growth rate, the relation. So these are questions related to economy, and we must go through that. It will be a good idea if you go through the budget also and see what are the good points, because good points are there, and some people say that it is a totally the budget which has no result whatsoever, and it's lackluster budget and so on. So overall, I would say that you are very good.
CO2 emissions.
Yeah. So the CO2 emissions which he's talking about. So what is the permissible limit of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere? That is 350 parts per million, but it has already crossed 400. So these kind of issues related to environment and climate change may come. And then the district administration, the role of the collector is so important. So you must understand the working of the district administration, because a large number of questions may be centered around the service, that is Indian Administrative Service, which is your first preference. So the first few years, the 7 or 8 or 10 years, you become the SDM and additional collector, and then CEO, RDA, and collector. So you must understand what is district administration, what are the different offices, who heads that, the district administration, the collector, its role in revenue functions, law and order functions, developmental functions, role of Zilla Parishad, role of Panchayat, role of Panchayat Samiti, the various policies which have been framed, like Ujjwala Yojana, Ujala Yojana, Namami Gange, and Swachh Bharat. So many public policies have been framed, and in the context of various sectors of society. So that you must know. Women empowerment again and gender sensitization is important. You must know some of the very, very good NGOs which have come up, which consist only of women. For example, one is Vijay Papad. So Vijay Papad is there, and Maka Sahkari, Mahila Sahkari Bank, and so there are many.
Seva also.
Seva also. So these are the institutions, and what the government is doing regarding women, short stay homes and various scholarships, education incentives. That is an area which you must learn by heart, because it is the key things which are going. And then of course the election process, how it takes place, role of the collector in that, and then the revenue administration hierarchy, the collector, the SDM, the Tehsildar, Patwari, Kanungo, and so on. So this is by and large. But don't forget the local bodies; they are very important. 70% before government. Otherwise, your knowledge about the international affairs is fine. You may have to read slightly more regarding India and its neighbors and the world international position between countries, the role of the United Nations institutions, WHO during COVID times, and other institutions, UNESCO, and so on. So, if you have any questions, you can ask us. Huh? You'll do very well. Only when you have a lot of time, you just go and just sharpen your knowledge slightly more, and remember the supplementaries which may come. So they may not stop at one question only. They may ask you, bombard you with some second, third, fourth question. Therefore, the depth of the knowledge is very important. And you can also visit one of the government office to have a first-hand knowledge about how village panchayat works, how Zilla Parishad works, and how the district.
Sir, when was the interview?
20th.
20th.
This still has time.
So we wish you good luck. You will do very well. Don't worry.
Go smiling. Absolutely, your dress sense is absolutely fine.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with it. Only thing is that the tie is of red color. Maybe you can choose to have a more sober color on that day. Though it is fine, but it suits, it gels with your coat also. But probably a more sober color would be better. Nothing wrong with what you are wearing.
Shirt also can be
Shirt can be white. Maybe white would be better.
I will wear a blue tie and white shirt.
Yeah, that would be fine. All the best.
Good
You
luck.
will do very well. Don't worry.
All the best.
Unacademy. Let's crack it.